KCAC and the Heart of America conferences are back from their midseason vacations, so Week 8 is on the way, and just because I may not be available on Thursday night, that doesn't mean that we can't have our midweek conversation like we're going to have tonight. It's a Wednesday night, but college football this week is live, and I am enjoying the opportunity to get to visit with you tonight. So much to talk about. 50% more games than what we had last week. That's right, just 30 last week. We have 44 on Saturday, and don't forget, there's one on Thursday night as well. Good evening. I'm Joey McWilliams here on College Football This Week. Thanks for watching. We're going to talk about the full NAIA slate of games for Week 8, and we're also going to be talking about what in fact we might want to bet the barn on when we talk about NAIA football this week, some totals bets, some prop bets, a little bit more, maybe some other news, and we are also going to look at some polls, both coaches' polls and media polls. Probably a little bit of commentary about that as well. So really, really quickly, shout out to Dave. Thanks, Dave, for joining us on a Wednesday night tonight. Roll Stangs. We have a lot of Mustangs stuff to talk about when we get to that game a little bit later on. Some big matchups, and interestingly enough, where in the past it might have been a battle of two undefeateds with Morningside and Northwestern. That's not going to be the case this year. Still a big-time matchup on the way in this one. But there are two other battles of unbeatens that are on the docket in Week 8. Big games with a lot of implications, because here we are. We are one weekend of games away from being 2/3 of the way through the regular season. So this stuff is really starting to have some implications. So let's just get right into it right now. Really quickly, though, if you are watching live tonight, and I know a number of you are, if you're watching, let us know in the chat from where you're watching, or what team you're going to be cheering for this week. Maybe both. We'd love to hear both of those things. I am right here on the proper side of the Red River, just a little bit north of that river. And although the team in Crimson and Cream didn't come away with a victory last Saturday, still doesn't mean I'm not on the proper side of the river. I'm here in southeastern Oklahoma, so let me know from where you are watching tonight. All right, let's get into it. One game on the docket for tomorrow night, a Thursday night game, and it involves the number one team in the country. Grandview comes in with a record of 5-0. 11th meeting between the Grandview Vikings and the Peru State Bobcats. Grandview 9-1 all-time in this series. Peru State won 18-17 all the way back in the season finale in 2008, and since that time, it's been all Grandview all the time. The Vikings are led by Jackson Waring, and we have talked about him so often. Let me throw out a couple of numbers here really quickly. 215.8 passing yards per game. Pretty solid numbers. They haven't needed that much. Defense, of course, takes care of business also for the Vikings. 15 touchdowns thrown, 1 interception. That is the best TD to interception ratio in the NAIA, and we'll talk about a few of those today as well. C.J. Dixon, the quarterback for Peru State, comes in throwing 297.6 passing yards per game. He's thrown 15 touchdowns as well. Here's where things are a little bit different. For Dixon, and we alluded to this, by the way, on Sunday night, that C.J. Dixon, or last Sunday night, I'm sorry, the Hearts had a little bit of a vacation since then, 15 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Not quite the same TD to interception ratio as Waring right there. And he's also scored on the ground, 4 rushing touchdowns. But he's fumbled the ball 5 times and lost 2 of them. So it is almost exactly a 2-to-1 ratio of touchdowns to turnovers for C.J. Dixon. That is something that the Bobcats cannot afford to have against Grandview. You can't make mistakes against the Vikings. The Vikings are good enough on their own, and when you give them an opportunity to capitalize on mistakes, that's a recipe for disaster. So if that is an area that Coach Akingay and the Bobcats can figure out, and they've had a week to rest and make the adjustments there, C.J. Dixon can throw the ball well. We'll see what happens against that Grandview defense. Grandview now comes in winning 65 consecutive regular season games. All of them Hart Conference games, but 65 consecutive regular season games. That is an incredible number. Shout out really quickly to Matt. And Matt, hey, listen, guys, I prayed about the voice tonight. We're going to have a voice for the entirety of the broadcast tonight. Matt says, roll Mets, and it is always a good day to be a comment. I can attest to that. No problem. I'm a comment too. COMETS, comments are the best. There we go. That was from high school, but I don't know. I I wasn't a cheerleader either, but you get those things drilled into your head over time. Saturday, October 18th, 44 more games for Week 8, and it gets started out on the East Coast. Big game in the Sun Conference here. St. Thomas 4-1 taking on Kaiser 5-0. Big matchup here for the Bobcats because this is really a game. If you win, you keep yourself in quality contention for an appearance in the football championship playoff field. A loss here, 2 of them, it's going to be tough with a couple more tough games on the docket for the Bobcats. So need to get a win at Kaiser. 8th meeting between the two, and the Bobcats have never won in this series. 7 previous victories for Kaiser. Of course, both of them relatively new programs. Neither one has played for 10 years yet as a football program. All time, 7-0 for Kaiser, and the Seahawks won 31-27 last year. St. Thomas beat Warner 52-6 last week. Kaiser beat Florida Memorial, really kind of dominated in that game where the Lions were coming in wanting to make a statement, did not do it against Kaiser at home, no less. 49-28, Kaiser with the victory last week. For St. Thomas, Keely Watson leads the way, 254.4 passing yards per game, 15 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. That's also a very, very good touchdown-interception ratio, 7.5 right there. Kaiser is converting third downs 56% of the time. That leads the NAIA. Here's the numbers, though. You might think this is a small sample set here, just 23 of 41. And you'd be right because it is a small sample set, but it's a testament to the fact that Kaiser doesn't need to get to third down very often. I mean, picking up first downs on first or second down when the Seahawks have the ball. So that's a big part of their game. Kaiser, however, though, 10.5 penalties per game, 5th in the NAIA, and they lead the NAIA in penalty yards, 109.5 penalty yards per game. That's something I know that Coach Russ would like to fix. Shea Spencer, of course, leading the way for the Seahawks as he has for a number of years and doing a fantastic job there. The Seahawks hosting St. Thomas on Saturday. Thomas hosting Ave Maria, 1 win between the two. 3rd meeting between these two schools. Ave Maria 2-0, won 28-14 last year and 28-22 in 2023. Jaden George, Division I transfer for the Gyrenes, had a season at Bowling Green, had 2 seasons at Miami, had a season at Florida Atlantic, and never saw action in any of those games. But a D1 transfer nonetheless. He played in week 1 and then last week as well. 17 for 34 passing, 240 yards, not bad. 2 touchdowns, no picks, and we'll see if George can come up with a road victory for the Gyrenes in this one, 1-4 on the year. Warner 0-5 at Florida Memorial. The Lions coming off that tough loss against Kaiser. As we mentioned, Warner lost to St. Thomas as well. 6th meeting between these two programs. The Florida Memorial Lions have a 4-1 record all-time, winning 43-15 last year. We talked about penalties a little bit earlier. Here's another Sun Conference team that's been penalized this year. 12.6 penalties per game for the Florida Memorial Lions. You just can't let that happen. That's at the top of the NAIA. Sun Conference schedule continues with Southeastern at 3-2, traveling to Weber International 4-2, 12th meeting between the schools. The Fire have won 9 of the previous 11, including a 45-0 shutout last year. Southeastern, Thomas Ibrahim leading the way on defense, 30 tackles to lead the team. He also has 12.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 of those sacks, also at the top of those lists for the Fires. Ibrahim leading that defense, and the Fire defense is solid, again, as was reflected not only last year in the shutout victory against Weber International. Southeastern shut out Thomas in their last time out, too, 69-0. So you think about the Fire and you think about defense. Weber International relies on defense as well. I think part of that's because the offense really hasn't gotten going as well as they would like to have it going there, but this could be a low-scoring game between these two schools. To the AAC, where Point is on the road at Pikeville. Point with the upset victory last year, a 2-point win, 23-21, that almost kept the Bears out of the playoffs and almost got the Skyhawks into the playoffs last year. It's homecoming in Pikeville, 7th meeting between these two programs. They're 3-3 all-time. Point defeated Union Commonwealth last week, 26-18, and Pike shut out Rio Grande 44-0 in the Red Storm's first trip to the AAC conference portion of the slate. Xavier Malone, 379.2 passing yards per game, tops in the NAI, 70.6% completion rate. It's an amazing number. Here's where the numbers drop off. And you look at it and you say, okay, Pikeville's 1-4. How is Malone able to do this? The problem with the numbers is the fact that it hasn't been able to be converted into scores. With numbers like that, 5 games in the books, just 8 touchdowns thrown and 3 interceptions for Malone. 2.67 touchdown interception ratio right there. Not what you want. I have said before, and I'll say it again, I believe that Pikeville will go on a tear as the conference slate not only has gotten started last week with Rio Grande, but also continues on through the next few games. You have Point today. Okay, that one's one you want back. You had that one circled on the calendar if you're Bears fans, because you definitely want that one back from last year. Rest of the way through the conference, you come to those final 2 games in weeks 11 and 12, Kentucky Christian and Reinhardt. Those are probably the 2 biggest challenges between Pikeville and an undefeated season in the AAC. Not to say that the other teams don't have the shot, but I think Pikeville has favorable matchups along the way. You get to those, how well are the Knights going to be playing in week 11? And, of course, Reinhardt, that's the big matchup. I thought it was really cool that the conference schedule maker put the Reinhardt game with Pikeville at the end of the conference slate instead of at the beginning where it was the previous 2 years. It makes a lot more sense there. It could be for not only a conference title, but a playoff spot when it comes down to that in the season finale. But again, Pikeville hosting Point and Homecoming there this weekend. Reinhardt, we talked about the Eagles. They're 3-3 right now, and they host Bluefield this week. And in 10 previous meetings between the 2 programs, the Eagles have come away unscathed in all of them. Won 24-16 last year. Deshaun Webster had himself a weekend last week in the victory over Kentucky Christian, a 3-point win over the Knights. And he was the AAC Defensive Player of the Week. We talked about his numbers last week. 18 tackles, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, which he took all the way to the house from 68 yards out. So the defense for the Eagles stepping up, and can they do it against the Rams this week? Union Commonwealth and Rio Grande, each coming off losses last week in their AAC openers. It's the first meeting between these 2 programs. 1-5 for the Bulldogs. The Red Storm is 0-5 right now, so one of those teams adding to the win total if they can. Kentucky Christian, the Knights, are playing out of conference and out of affiliation this weekend as they go on the road to Ohio to take on Central State Division II program. The Kentucky Christian Knights are 3-3 on the year. First meeting between these 2 programs. Jackson Wasik continues to put up good numbers for Coach Aubrey and the Knights. 282.4 passing yards per game, 65.4 completion rating, and a 13-2 touchdown to interception ratio. These numbers start to add up at this point of the season and really start to make sense of what the quarterbacks and what these offenses are able to do. Central State, the offensive numbers aren't that great, but Matthias Davis has 8 sacks for Central State on defense. To the Mid-South, where Faulkner is 2-3 and Cumberland's is 3-3. 8th meeting between the 2 schools. Patriots 6-1 all time, including a 26-21 victory last year. Each one of them needing to get a victory, coming off a loss in the Mid-South opener last week. 2-point loss to Georgetown for Faulkner. Had to be a heartbreaking loss there. And Cumberland's lost to Lindsey Wilson. Could have been heartbreaking, but it sure didn't come down to the final moments there as the Blue Raiders came away with a 49-point win, 62-13. Cumberland, the Phoenix, 3-3, also on the road at Georgetown, taking on the 4-2 Tigers. 26th meeting between the 2 schools. Georgetown owning a 20-5 advantage, winning by 5 last year, and they've won 9 straight in the series. Georgetown needing to get a win in this one, kind of riding the ship. 2 losses. The Tigers still have opportunities in the playoffs, especially with the victory in the Mid-South opener last week against Faulkner. Needed that 2-point win against the Eagles in that one, but you definitely want to get every win you can from this point on. Lindsey Wilson at Campbellsville, one of those battles of unbeatens in the NAIA in Week 8. 6-0 and 5-0, the respective records between these 2 schools. It's the battle for Highway 55. 16th meeting, and the Blue Raiders own a 10-5 advantage, won by 6 last year. Lindsey Wilson, led by Tate Rice, QB2 when the season started. He's definitely QB1 right now, and he has been nothing short of effective and stellar for the Blue Raiders, completing 69.4% of his passes, 12 touchdowns, only one pick on the year. Rice has come in and done his job, again, leading Lindsey Wilson to a 62-13 victory over the University of the Cumberlands. Campbellsville beat Cumberland last week 49-34. Trey Bass has been putting up great numbers for the Tigers. 10 total touchdowns. Of course, he had 5 of them last week in the game against Cumberland's in that one. So the battle for Highway 55 and really the driver's seat of the Mid-South with a victory in this one, whoever is able to take that one away. Indiana Wesleyan, 4-2 at Madonna, 1-5, fifth meeting between the two. The Wildcats, 4-0, as you might imagine, winning 59-0 in the season opener last year. Arjun Lothi, 324.5 passing yards per game. That's good enough for fourth in the NAIA, and the Wildcats have a favorable matchup in this game. Judson, 0-6 on the road at Olivet Nazarene. The Tigers are 4-1 for Coach Avant Mitchell. Fifth meeting between these two programs. Olivet Nazarene has won all 5. I guess it's a 6th meeting between the two. 65-20 the win last year. Christian Dew Reed for the Tigers, 265.3 passing yards per game. He's averaging 10.0 yards per attempt. That stat is one of those that's just really amazing. When you think about it, every single time he throws the ball, it's the equivalent of a first down stats overall. I realize there's a bit of a fallacy there, but still, when you think about it, I mean, 10.0 yards per attempt, not just per completion. So fantastic season for Dew Reed for the Tigers, 11 touchdowns thrown to just 1 interception. Lawrence Tech at 1-4, getting the big victory over Judson last week, 59-28. And it was the first win of the season for the Blue Devils. They're now 1-4 on the year on the road at Siena Heights as the Saints continue the farewell tour. 7th meeting between the two, and this is a number in Siena Heights' favor. 6-0 all-time against the Blue Devils. Would definitely like to close out this season with an unscathed record against an opponent. Siena Heights won 34-14 last year. Taylor is 3-3, coming off a 9-2 record last year. The Trojans have dropped off just a little bit, but the ground game continues. Nathan Parker, 134 rushing yards per game, 5th in the NAIA in that category, 12 rushing touchdowns a game, or not a game. That would be pretty impressive. 12 rushing touchdowns, that's 3rd in the NAIA. Taylor on the road at Defiance, 24th meeting between these two programs. Taylor leads the all-time series 14-9. Taylor averaging 274.2 rushing yards per game, 2nd in the NAIA behind only Friends, and 25 rushing touchdowns behind only Friends in that category. So Taylor on the road at Defiance. It's St. Francis of Indiana at Marion, the Franciscan Bowl. Both teams come in 5-1. 21st meeting between the two. Marion with a slight 11-9 edge overall. And St. Francis, however, won by 3 last year. Two solid quarterbacks in this matchup. Joshua Kulka, 282.2 passing yards per game, 9th in the NAIA, 65.2 completion rating, 17 touchdowns to just 3 picks. And Tristan Polk for Marion, how about that? 205.8 passing yards per game, 12 touchdowns to just 1 interception. A possible playoff spot on the line here in the Midwest. This is the first Midwest game for all of the mid-states teams, both sides, both divisions in that. And so you have to think Olivet Nazarene comes in 5-1, St. Francis 5-1, Marion 5-1. This is the time to pick up a victory. You could be looking back at this one a little bit later on the season because 1 loss turns to 2 losses, and how many spots are there going to be other than the automatic qualifying bid coming out of the Midwest Division of the Mid-States? So you have to think about that in there. Both teams coming off a victory last week, heading into the Franciscan Bowl. St. Xavier at 4-2. St. Francis of Illinois, 2-3. 28th meeting between the two. St. Xavier owns a 25-2 record overall, but St. Francis of Illinois got its 2nd win in the series last year, 36-29, stopping a 17-game slide against the Cougars, looking for a victory here in this Midwest battle. And we head now to the Heart of America Conference, coming off that bye week last week. Missouri Baptist 1-4 on the road at William Penn. 3rd meeting between the two. Statesmen 2-0 all time, having a 6-2 victory a couple of years ago. That was opening the season. Really, that was one of those numbers you had to look at twice to go. The schedule just started. Are the numbers right on this one? Yeah, 6-2 the win over Missouri Baptist 2 years ago. And then a 51-20 win back in 2014, the last time or the first time these two teams met. Jacob Jones, D1 transfer at Missouri Baptist, 230.4 passing yards per game, 55% completion. He's scored 13 touchdowns, 7 of them passing, 6 of them rushing, but the Spartans unable really to convert anything else beyond that and falling to 1-4. Lots of divisional crossover play here, so this one in the Heart North. 54% on third down. That's what the Statesmen are. Look down a stat right there. I think this is still a divisional game. That's running that through. 54% third down are the Statesmen. That's second in the NAIA in that category. And William Penn is led by Destin Loring. He was named the Player of the Month for William Penn, along with one of the volleyball players for the Statesmen. For August-September, he's averaging 130.8 rushing yards per game, 13 rushing touchdowns. That leads the NAIA in that category. He also has a receiving category to his credit as well. Look to hear his name often in this matchup. Mid-American Nazarene and Baker, that's definitely a Heart-South matchup there. 5-1 are the Pioneers. 2-3 are the Wildcats. 46th meeting between the two programs. Baker 27-18 all time, but Mid-American Nazarene won last year 20-14. That was really instrumental in getting the Pioneers into the playoffs. It had been a little while, and Mid-American Nazarene had finally gotten a couple of wins over Benedictine, but wasn't able to turn that double play and get Benedictine and Baker in the same year. They get a win over Baker last year, 68-14. They get the win over William Woods this season, does Baker, and finally getting that second win of the year. Mid-American Nazarene, Drew Miller leading the way, 267.5 passing yards per way. For Baker, it's Truman Julesgaard, 179.4 passing yards per game. Think about this for just a moment. We've talked about Julesgaard a lot. He was a big part of Baker's run into the playoffs last year. Now, they didn't have him in the playoffs last year, and that, I think, played into the fact that the Wildcats were unable to pick up a victory there. I take nothing away from Pikeville in that, but it changed the trajectory of the matchup between the two schools. Julesgaard, however, got off to a rough start, and that is euphemistic. No question. That's kind. It was a very, very rough start. The Wildcats got off to an 0-3 start, have won back-to-back games since then. What are they going to do as they get into divisional play right now? 179.4 passing yards per game. If you would have told me that 5 games into the Baker schedule that Julesgaard's numbers passing-wise would be 48th in the country, I don't know that I would have bought into that much, but it is the case. And talk about touchdown to interceptions through this point, 5 games in, 5 touchdowns thrown, 5 interceptions thrown as well. A 1-to-1 TD to INT ratio. That says a lot about why you're 2-3. Now, 22 players that start for these programs. This is just one for the Wildcats. A lot of other things come into play for Coach Regalato's team. But the quarterback factor is big right here. Can those numbers change? Will Baker be able to get the win as the folks from Olathe make the short trip down to Baldwin City for this matchup? I talked a lot about Baker in this one, the Pioneers. It's been a solid season. They're 5-1. Ion Carter has been able to do things not only on the offensive side of the ball, catching touchdown passes from Drew Miller. He's been able to score a couple of kickoff returns for scores as well. So a big matchup here. Don't be fooled by the records of 5-1 and 2-3. There is a lot on the line between the Pioneers and the Wildcats in this one. Expect it to be a crowded stadium in Baldwin City on Saturday. Benedictine, the Ravens are 5-1 on the year, taking on Central Methodist, who 2-4, 40th meeting between the two. Ravens have won 35 of the previous 39, winning 49-10 last year. Central Methodist won 30-24 back in 2021, and that was a big year for Central Methodist because they were 9-3 that year, made the postseason that year. It's been a huge drop-off record-wise for the program since then, but again, it picked up the second win of the season for the first time since that 2021 year. Jackson Dooley, 300.3 passing yards per game. That's 5th in the NAIA, 19 touchdowns to just 5 picks. a 3.8 ratio there of touchdowns to interceptions. The Ravens on the road in this one. Graceland also on the road. Yellow Jackets taking on St. Ambrose. 2-3 is Graceland right now, and the Fighting Bees are 1-5. Seventh meeting between these two programs. Javon Miner leading the way for the Yellow Jackets, 146.2 rushing yards per game. He has 4 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown as well. Alec Ponder, through the first part of the season, was putting up numbers very similar to what Xavier Malone was doing, and the results for the Bees were pretty similar to what the Pikeville results were as well. Right now, he's throwing 237.7 passing yards per game. Those are numbers that need to continue if the Fighting Bees have a chance in this one. This one is in Davenport. And we continue with the Hart Conference a little more here. Missouri Valley Vikings on the road at William Woods. The travel across the northern part of the state up there in Missouri. 3-2 is Missouri Valley right now. William Woods, the Owls are 0-6. Second meeting in this series. For the Vikings, Tamel Staples, 51.1% completion percentage. The cross-Hart transfer for the Vikings. Culver Stockton, 3-3 after coming off a win against Graceland before the bye week, 28-21 at Clark. The Pride, 1-5, sixth meeting between the two. And Culver Stockton's won 4 of the last 5. Liam Thornton for the Wildcats, 247 passing yards per game, 14 touchdowns thrown to just 6 interceptions. And the Lancers of Mount Marty, as we get into GPAC play, this is a big matchup right here. 4-2, Mount Marty, 4-2 on the year. Dort, 5-0 on the year. The Defenders, 10th or 11th, depending upon which poll you look at. Fifth meeting between the two. Dort, 4-0 all-time against Mount Marty, winning 35-17 in 2024. And really, you might look at that point of the schedule and say that's where things change just a bit for the Lancers. 4-2 coming in last year. You match up against Dort in the 7th game on your schedule and come away with an 18-point loss. And from that point, including that loss, they were just 2-3 for the remainder of the season. Still got the winning record, but not quite the trajectory they wanted from that point. Mount Marty defeated Doane 31-14 last week, and Dort defeated Waldorf 59-7 last week. Dual sports star and dual threat and hometown boy in Yankton, Rugby Riken. 222 passing yards per game, 15 touchdowns thrown to 4 interceptions. For Dort, they're putting up 47.6 points per game. That's a number that would have made all the difference in the world in 2024 for the Defenders. And right now, it's keeping the Defenders at 5-0 and undefeated on the year. Giving up just 6.8 points per game, tied for tops in the NAIA. So the 4th best point production in the NAIA and the top defensive point allowed in the NAIA. That's a recipe to be 5-0 at this point. Dort is putting up 265.4 rushing yards per game, 3rd in the NAIA behind Taylor and Friends. I really think the key to a lot of this is Noah Strickfaden. 190.6 passing yards per game. He's thrown 10 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. The ground game keeps it going. The passing game from Strickfaden enough to keep the defenses for the opposition honest in that. And Coach Penner just has a fantastic game plan. And honestly, if you just continue going along, giving up only 6.8 points per game, you just get a couple of touchdowns on the offensive side, and this thing is in the books. So this is a big deal for Dort, wanting to stay undefeated and keep in that top tier in the GPAC. Mount Marty trying to make its way into the top tier of the GPAC. A lot on the line there for Dort and Sioux Center on Saturday. I want to stop right now and just say it's time to take a breath, maybe even a real quick drink of water. And give a shout out to anybody that's watching live. By the way, if you're watching this on demand, well, still you can let us know in the comment section from where you are watching. Dave and Matt, I sure am glad you guys are along for the ride tonight. We'll do the Bet the Barn segment a little bit later on, and both of you might be interested in the Bet the Barn segment tonight. No question about that one. All right. By the way, if you are new to Midwest Sports Net and, of course, College Football This Week, one of the shows that we have here on the channel, you haven't yet subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It really does make a difference, and we're grateful for that. It's very encouraging, and I know it makes a difference. Join the channel as well. We'd love to have you on board, helping to be a part of what we were doing right here, but definitely be a part of the community here and get in the chat. All right. Back to the GPAC. Let's go to Morningside at Northwestern, Orange City, and the stadium should be full. So, Dave, I'm assuming, I know that we shouldn't assume too much, but I'm assuming you're going to be on hand in Orange City for this one. Morningside, 5-1. Northwestern, 3-3. Don't be fooled by the records. This is still a big time matchup. 36th meeting between the two. Morningside's 125 and won 13-7 last year. And that number was what you might consider a really low number. The defense has stepped in, and it was an interesting matchup last year. Last week, Morningside defeated Dakota Wesleyan 49-17. Northwestern shut out Briarcliff 28-0. And Dave says, yes, we'll be there. I didn't think there was really a question about that, but I definitely wanted to know. 2024, it was the 13th one-score game between Northwestern and Morningside. So in 35 previous matchups, 13 of them really have come down to the wire. Northwestern held Morningside to its lowest point total since 2013. Even in a loss last year. So a really tight matchup between the two. Morningside's averaging 51 points per game right now. That's a far cry from 13. Of course, 49 in last week's game. That's third in the NAIA, led by Zach Chevalier, 334 passing yards per game. Third in the NAIA there as well. His 24 passing touchdowns lead the NAIA list in that category. Of course, he finds Drew Sellen early and often. Sellen with 126.8 receiving yards per game, third in the NAIA. He has 11 receiving touchdowns. That's at the top of the NAIA list as well. So between those two guys on offense and what the defense can do for Morningside, and, I've heard some chatter about the fact that Morningside hasn't just put everyone away. They've allowed some of the other teams to stick around maybe a little bit longer, haven't been putting people away in the early going. Does that make a difference? Well, it really hasn't slowed them down to this point yet. Now, a loss to Benedictine early on, that was in the season opener. Not everything is now as it was then, or will be, by the way, when the regular season comes to the conclusion. At this point, you need to be winning ball games. And I would dare say that a 32-point victory is not really anything to sneeze at for Morningside, of course, against Dakota Wesleyan in that. For Northwestern, 3-3 on the season. All three wins have been shutouts. A 40-0 shutout against Waldorf, a 23-0 shutout against Dakota Wesleyan, and, of course, last week's shutout over Briarcliff, 28-0. The defense has been averaging 9.2 points per game that it's giving up. That's fourth in the NAIA. So even though there have been some struggles for the Red Raiders on offense, Colby Duncan came alive last week and looks like he's a little bit more comfortable and back in the saddle for the Red Raiders, playing at home against a big-time rival in this one. You leave nothing to chance here, and this is one of those games, again, for Morningside, taking on Dakota Wesleyan, looking ahead, and I know that coaches wouldn't look ahead. Fans might look ahead. Media, we look ahead. But if you're looking ahead a little bit, you look at Northwestern and say the 2-3, but we're on the road there. You may look ahead a little bit. Same thing for Northwestern. Northwestern really couldn't afford to look ahead. 2-3 coming into that game. And, of course, the incident with the bus that delayed the start of the game 4 hours last week, really the Red Raiders definitely came to play in that one. So this one at home, Morningside 5-1, Northwestern 3-3. Disregard everything I just said about records. It's going to be a tight matchup, and we're going to talk about it in our Bet the Barn segment in just a moment. Concordia, the Bulldogs lost their first game of the season last week in a 60-52 double overtime thriller against Midland, and they're on the road now, taking on Hastings. Broncos 3-3 coming in 58th meeting in this series. For Concordia, the thing you may want to look at in this one is the fact that the Bulldogs have given up 103 points in the last two games, and a large part of that coming as passing touchdowns. Of course, last week, 7 touchdowns through the air for Brody Johnson. So an area on defense I know that Coach Deverco and his staff are addressing, but again, from the outside perspective, something you want to look at. And also on defense, Hastings has Wyatt Ryan. He had the big pick 6 and the game-winning score on the road at Northwestern a couple of weeks ago when they got that 10-9 victory over Northwestern. He was named the National Defensive Player of the Week for a pick six, a big-time win, a big-time score over Northwestern. They shut down the Red Raiders. I don't want to go back to the other game, but that, it's a defense that doesn't allow much points for Northwestern, but the offense really hasn't gotten much going as well. So, again, we'll see how that turns out. Concordia at Hastings. We know the Bulldogs can score. Can they get the defensive stops against Hastings if they're going to continue this run and, again, try to stay in that top tier of the GPAC? Briarcliff is 4-3. Midland is 2-3, coming off that big win we talked about a little bit earlier. 23rd meeting between the two programs. Midland 17-5 all time, winning 45-30 last year, and the Warriors have won 5 straight in this one. Brody Johnson, 14 touchdowns thrown on the year, just 1 interception. It's an incredible TD to INT ratio. However, you look, of those 14 touchdowns thrown, 7 of them came last week against Concordia. So maybe a skewed number just a bit, but still has that number in his back pocket. And we move on an abridged schedule for the GPAC, even though there's some pretty big games in there as well. We move on over to the KCAC now, and Ottawa at Evangel. Third meeting between the two. Evangel's won the previous 2 in the last 2 years. It's the battle of the top 2 winning percentages in the KCAC of programs, all-time winning percentages, as Ottawa has an all-time 57.4 winning percentage for the entirety of the program. Evangel has an all-time 54.7 winning percentage for the entirety of the program. They're at the top of that list in the KCAC. Last week, Ottawa lost to Friends, but stayed in it, holding Friends to just a 28-7 score. And Evangel shut down Kansas Wesleyan, 2 field goals, not enough for the Coyotes, as Evangel had a touchdown, and Evangel won 7-6. Again, I say last week, the last game. That was 2 weeks ago against Kansas Wesleyan. Here's the number I've thrown out a couple of times this year. We'll throw it out again. The Valor are 10-0 in the last 2 years against the teams that remain on their schedule. Against the divisional opponents in the Kessinger division this year, Valor is 10-0 in the last 2 years against those opponents. And until someone proves otherwise, Evangel has a very clear path to getting the automatic qualifying bid. You have to go out and win those games, but if you look ahead and say, okay, these are teams that Evangel can win, it's there for the taking for the Valor in this revamped division in the KCAC. With the win, by the way, Coach Chuck Hepola will be tied with Keith Bearfield at the top of the list of wins for head coaches in the Evangel program. So for Coach Hepola trying to get one more win, I'm sure he's not thinking about that right now, but we are, because it's a cool number. Reed Potts leading the way for the Valor on offense, 204 passing yards per game for the Nixa product, who will be playing in Nixa on Nixa High School field on Saturday. Coyotes 4-2. Kansas Wesleyan having lost 2 straight now. Coyotes at St. Mary 2-4. 25th meeting between the two. Kansas Wesleyan 20-4 all time, and has won 7 straight in the series. I mentioned that Kansas Wesleyan is 4-2, having lost its last 2 games. It's really interesting. A 7-6 loss to Evangel and a loss to Tabor as well. The 2 scores combined, Kansas Wesleyan has lost 35-25. Not a lot of points scored or given up in this 2-game slide. So the Coyotes trying to right the ship. Here's the big one in the KCAC. McPherson 6-0 at Friends, 6-0. Big matchup in Wichita on Saturday. 81st meeting between the two, and it's been pretty tight. Friends 43 wins. McPherson 37 wins all time. Friends got the 36-35 victory. Wow. A Friends touchdown, the only touchdown in the fourth quarter, and it was a late 80-yard drive. Nick Cordova running in the final score from 1 yard out. 36-35, the victory over McPherson. Listen, Friends got a couple of close wins against teams that are in the same division with the Falcons this year, and you know their game's circled on the calendar, so you can't look past anything here. McPherson beat Bethany 37-13 last week. Friends beat Ottawa 28-7. Let's look at some of these numbers, and it's going to take another drink of water here to do that. How about these numbers? Friends, 56.2 points per game, tops in the NAIA. McPherson, 43 points per game. It's 16 in the NAIA, but still they combined for 99.2 points per game. Defense, the complete other end of the spectrum. Friends is giving up just 7.2 points per game, third in the NAIA. McPherson giving up just 12 points per game. It's tied for sixth in the NAIA. Friends, on defense, giving up just 19.5 rushing yards per game. That's at the top of the NAIA. McPherson giving up just 60.5 rushing yards per game, fourth in the NAIA. These offenses and these defenses are solid. They are steady. And are they unstoppable forces? Are they going to be immovable objects? Which defense is going to step up in this game against an offense that has proven itself to be very, very powerful? For McPherson, Jack Markarian, 256.7 passing yards per game, 17th in the NAIA, 16 passing touchdowns, 16 touchdowns, just 5 interceptions, a 3.2 ratio there. For Friends, though, it's all about the ground game. 488 rushing yards per game, 8.7 yards per carry, 42 rushing touchdowns, and you probably would imagine that Friends is at the top of the NAIA in all three of those categories. But the defense has stepped up too, leading the NAIA in 26 sacks as the Falcons have been able to get into the backfield of their opponents over the course of this season, averaging 6.3 sacks per game. It's a lot. There's a lot on the line in this one, and I want to pitch one thing that could be a stat. All those things we've thrown out. Solid offenses, solid defenses. Could turnovers be the key in this game? And we'll mention this again in the Bet the Barn segment, but could turnovers be the key in this game? As we were talking, and I think it was Matt, I believe I was talking with you about this in the chat, and we were talking about the fact that a ground attack, if you get behind, it's tough to catch up. You often don't pick up the big ground gains if it's just a rushing attack. And so turnovers are big here because if a person can grab a 7-point lead, grab a 10-point lead, grab a 14-point lead over Friends, and then get the ball back, number one, it keeps the Falcons' tough offense off the field, but you take away the momentum of a drive. I mean, the Falcons have proven they can take a drive, start anywhere on the field, and make it all the way down. Turnovers are big, and turnovers were costly and have been costly for Friends in the last couple of years, especially when there have been losses. You look back to the loss to Evangel a couple of years ago, where maybe Friends might have been favored in that one on the road at Nixa in Springfield, near Springfield at Nixa. And turnovers in that game. So I think that's going to be a key to this one. Southwestern is 5-1. Sterling is 1-5. Southwestern's won 5 straight in the series. Jamie Odom lighting it up, 291.5 passing yards per game, 20 passing touchdowns. That's second in the NAIA behind Chevalier. Matthew Holthusen, 132 receiving yards per game, second in the NAIA behind Drew Sellen in that category. I think he's just ahead of Drew Sellen in the category. He's behind Sellen in the touchdowns category. There we go. 9 receiving touchdowns, third in the NAIA in that category. Southwestern on the road in this one to the other division, as we are there with Southwestern now. Avila is 0-6, taking on Bethany 2-4. Coach Grossner needs a win here. The Swedes need a win here. The Swedes have been able to get a couple of wins in divisional play, but not as much in crossover play, but not as much in divisional play. And Bethany still has a chance to make some noise in its own division now. Having won 2 games this year, you want to pick up a victory against Avila. You're 1-9 all time against the Eagles. This is where you pick up the win for Bethany, even after coming off a loss to McPherson a couple of years ago. With respect, the Bulldogs and the Eagles are not the same right now. So this is where you try to get that win. Bethel at Tabor. And Tabor led by A.J. King, second in the NAIA with 10 receiving touchdowns. 57th meeting in this series. Both teams are 2-4 coming in. Blue Jays again trying to pick up a victory in this one, winning by a point last year. We move to the Sooner Athletic Conference, where Mary Hardin Baylor is traveling to Crowley ISD to take on the Texas Wesleyan Rams. That is the site of the NAIA National Championship game in 2025. Division III program here. And make no mistake about Mary Hardin Baylor, even though it lost to Hardin Simmons last week, 34-7 and 2-3 on the year. This is a program that has won 3 national championships in Division III in the last 10 years. You say that again. 3 national championships in D3 in the last 10 years. It is a quality program. It is Texas football. They have a lot of Texas high school football players on their Texas college football roster. Solid program, just outside Waco, as you might imagine. Mary Hardin, one of those names, all throughout Southwest Texas. One of the, definitely benefactors for so many schools in the area. This was actually a women's school way back when, and it's it's more than 150 years old. I think it's closer to 175 years old. Division III program now, part of the Baylor system at Texas Wesleyan. And Texas Wesleyan beat Louisiana Christian by a wide margin last week, 61-28 in this one. Texas Wesleyan 4-0 in the Sooner Athletic Conference, out of conference play this week, and out of affiliation play this week as well. Cole Francis has stepped in for Carson Rogers and done a pretty good job leading the way at quarterback. And how about Freddie Hoya, the NAIA National Special Teams Player of the Week last week, 19 points. He was 4 of 4 field goal attempts, made all 7 of his extra point attempts as well. 19 points for Hoya, and again, honored nationally by the NAIA. Arkansas Baptist is 2-4 on the road at Oklahoma Panhandle State, also 2-4. Fourth meeting between the two. The Aggies are 3-0 in the series and won 52-6 last year. Langston 2-4 at Wayland Baptist. 14th meeting between these two programs. 14. How many of you think that Langston has won in this series? If you said the 13 previous meetings, you'd be right. Winning 21-20, though, last year in the season finale between the two. So the Pioneers were oh so close to breaking that stride for Langston. It could be a good matchup. And again, I've said all season, coaching Ojo's team, this could be the year. So this might be the time when that slide against the Lions stops. You get the game out there in Plainview. An opportunity for a Langston team that's just 2-4 right now might be struggling, even though Langston admittedly has played some quality opponents, a couple of Division I opponents, and it's been a tough schedule for Langston this season. Coming off a big win in homecoming last week, but they have a big-time travel out to West Texas for this game. Wayland Baptist with the opportunity. Finally could get a win in this series. Not calling the game, just saying it's an opportunity. Nelson at Louisiana Christian, make the trip to Pineville, 7th meeting between the two. And Nelson lost to Panhandle State last week. Louisiana Christian lost to Texas Wesleyan last week. That was the first Sooner Athletic Conference loss for the Wildcats. Can't afford to pick up another one here if you want to have an opportunity to be playing for a playoff spot a little bit later on. And finally, to the Frontier Conference, Valley City State's 4-2. Dakota State is 4-2 as well. We talked about Dakota State during the summer and what would happen if Dakota State made a run in the Frontier East Division. Well, they're trying to do that right now. Dakota State stopped a 14-game slide against Dickinson State and won for the first time ever in Dickinson with the win last week, 27-25, spoiling homecoming for the Blue Hawks. Can they go back home and pick up a big victory over Valley City State? Well, Valley City State's 30-7 all-time in this series, but Dakota State won both times they met in 2024, 19-8 and 13-6. So they don't have to play each other 2 times this season, but that's what it was all about last year. I think that the Trojans are in a good place right now and would not be surprised to see Coach Anderson's squad continue to do well. Big opportunity at home for Dakota State there in Madison. MSU Northern, 1-5 on the road at Mayville State. Talk about another team with an opportunity here. 5th meeting between these two. Northern's won 3 of the 4 previous matchups, but won 23-7 in 2024 did the Comets. Northern won 14-0 in 2023, and that was the only win of the season for the Lights, was the 14-0 shutout over Mayville State 2 years ago. Northern lost to Tech 49-7 last week. Mayville State lost to Valley City State, shutout 21-0 last week. For Northern, Kendall O'Neill, a sophomore from way out in Arlee, Montana, way out west there, 12 for 26 passing, 119 yards in the loss to Montana Tech. He's trying to find his footing, and the Lights just need a quarterback to find his footing here. So it's a sophomore getting the opportunity. For Mayville State, 254.7 rushing yards per game, fourth in the NAIA, led by Isaiah Smith and Moses Nuapa. That's right. The Mayville State Comets are led by Isaiah and Moses in that ground attack. And both of them have 300-plus rushing yards. Isaiah Smith, 315. Moses Nuapa, 304. They both have biblical names. And I'm telling you, Matt, maybe we talked to Coach Larson about this. I don't know. But I'm thinking that you just have to have some specific plays. I mean, like for Isaiah, you have to have the Here Am I, Lord, Send Me series. This is where you just line everybody up there. And I mean, 1, 2, and 3 downs in the series. You send him to the left, you send him to the right, you send him out of the backfield right up the middle. That's the Here Am I, Lord, Send Me series. And for Moses, there's no question about this one. This one is the Let My People Go play. Now, you can do it once. You can do it more than once, but you're not going to have much surprise even when you get up there. I mean, this is a jumbo package, and it's a double tight set, and you bring in the receivers from the outside, and you just put everybody in there. You snap the ball, and you hand it off to Moses. He goes right up the middle, and everyone is screaming to let my people go, and they part the Red Sea. That's all I'm saying. You have to have those two particular series with these two guys in the backfield. If Coach Larson is listening, I don't know. We'll see. Is anyone still listening? Please let me know, by the way. Dickinson State 2-4 at Rocky Mountain, 1-4, 40th meeting between the two. Dickinson State has lost 4 straight right now. Rocky Mountain, coming off its first win of the season. Is the momentum enough for the Battling Bears to be able to pick up a victory over the Blue Hawks at home coming off that bye? And in that bye week, Darius Hawkins was a National Special Teams Player of the Week. We just talked about Hoya. Well, the week before it was Darius Hawkins and what he did in running the ball back, his return game. Montana Western is 4-2. College of Idaho 4-1, 19th meeting between the two. It's been a tight series. Montana Western 10-8 all time, and the Bulldogs won 42, 25, and 24. However, College of Idaho won both of the matchups in 2023, and that included a win in the playoffs. Michael Palandri leading the way for the Bulldogs, 339.5 passing yards per game, second in the NAI, 20 passing touchdowns, second in the NAI there as well. He's found Eli Norse many, many times, including the fact that he has 135.7 receiving yards per game. That's at the top of the country. Caden Young for College of Idaho, 210 passing yards per game. He has 51 rushing yards per game, 261 plus yards of total offense each contest. This one, there's a lot of potential in here. And what does it say? You see Carroll up at the top of the West in the Frontier right now, second place spot. If Hinchman 21 is listening, does one of these two schools pick up an at-large bid into the football championship playoff field? Win right here goes a long way toward making a statement toward that at-large bid. Simpson is 0-6 and taking on Carroll. We mentioned the Saints there really in the driver's seat now in the Frontier West. Second meeting between the two, Carroll won 52-0 last year. Speaking of last week, Caden Hewitt, the Frontier Conference Offensive Player of the Week, responsible for 6 touchdowns, 5 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown. This is a favorable matchup for Carroll in the contest. Eastern Oregon 2-4, Southern Oregon 2-4. 85th meeting between the two. Southern Oregon's won 59 of the previous 84, including a 49-21 victory last year. Dom Montiel, talk about accounting for a lot of scores. He accounted for 5 last week for the Raiders, 3 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns. Neither of these teams really where you think they wanted to be at the start of the season, but we're midway through. You've got the issues that you're dealing with. It's, we've talked about Gunnar Yates and the fact that he has had a season-ending surgery. So without that part of the ground game for Southern Oregon, a lot of respect for what Coach Burke is doing, Coach Brown is doing, and also for what Don Montiel has been able to do with not about the same offensive plan that you had going into it there. So anyway, all right. Moses, the fullback, runs right up the gut, parting the sea, if you will. Isaiah, the wingback, who shows a lot of speed on the edge. So in that speed, does he? I wonder if he ever says, "Here am I, Lord, send me." That would be. You go into the huddle and you just say that. I think that says, "Call my number." Anyway, all right, and we got. Let's see, one more here, and this one is an out of conference game. I liked this one when I saw it on the schedule this summer, and I'm still happy it's there. I don't think the records are what. One team, Arizona Christians, 1-4. OUAZ's 5-0. These two teams, the only two NAIA football playing programs in the state of Arizona. Seventh meeting between the two, and the Spirit have won 4 of the previous 6. Won by 30 back in 2023. That's the last time they played. Luke Jerome, 226.6 passing yards a game, 13 touchdowns, just 2 picks he's given up. It's still a rivalry game, I would say. But, this is one of those where I guess in every rivalry game you say throw out the records. And the Firestorm, I'm sure, would just like to throw out the record anyway right now. But you pick up a win in this game, just traveling across the way over to OUAZ. That would be a big-time victory for the program. And for OUAZ, it's an out-of-conference game. A loss doesn't hurt you, but you still don't want to give up that undefeated record. So definitely a lot to play for in this one at Ottawa. All right, that has taken us through the 45 games on the docket for Week 8 of the NAIA schedule. And we'll take a break long enough to get a drink of water. In all of this, to look and let's see, you know what there? Well, let's see, we can bring up the national polls from this week. The NAIA coaches poll. Let's talk about this one for just a moment. That shouldn't just read William. There's not just some guy named William in at number 25. It should read William Penn. I'm not sure what happened to his last name, but if you just want to call him William, I suppose that you can. Tie at the 20 spot between McPherson and College of Idaho. A little surprised, but McPherson was that far down in the rankings. And then you see number 19, Texas Wesleyan, still in the top 25. Along the way, Southeastern, Southwestern, and then up at the number 12 spot, Carroll continuing to climb in the coaches poll and the ranking there. And to the top 10, Dort in at number 10, well deserving of that, as is Campbellsville at number 9. Those 3 spots there at 5, 6, and 7, there was a minor amount of controversy last week in that. We'll talk about it just a little bit here. Morningside in at 4, Benedictine 3, Kaiser at number 2, the national runner-up last year and undefeated still, and Grandview, of course, yet to lose since 2023, a 19-game win streak now the Vikings are on. And if you look at these really, really quickly, and let's talk about this. Let's go over 5, 6, and 7 really quickly because it just warrants mention when you say that there was some controversy that 2 weeks ago that Montana Tech was at 5 and Friends at 6 and Lindsey Wilson at 7. And then Montana Tech dropped to number 7, Friends at 5, Lindsey Wilson at 6. And what happened? Well, there are lots of different things can happen. One of the votes seemed to not be there, so that 16th vote wasn't there. Could have affected the numbers. We talked about that in last week's program. So now it's a little bit different, but still, that mysterious and elusive 16th voter found his way back into the polling system and into the ranking. And let's talk about 5, 6, and 7 from week to week then. So where it was last week to where it is now, Friends was on a bye week. They did nothing. I'm sure that Coach Harrison and the Falcons did something. But on the field, in competition, they did nothing and stayed at that number 5 spot. Montana Tech moved from 7 to 6. And Montana Tech is coming off a victory, a 49-7 victory over Montana State Northern. Montana State Northern is a team that has won 1 or 0 games in each of the last 10 years. 49-7 victory, and so Montana Tech left over Lindsey Wilson to get into that number 6 spot after its victory. Lindsey Wilson, meanwhile, also won, also undefeated, and won 62-13 over Cumberland's, a team that has averaged 6.3 wins per season, a winning record per season over the last 10 years as well. 3 wins this season. So I'm not sure exactly all of the logic in there. Was that mysterious and 16th voter to blame or to be credited for the Montana Tech leap into the number 6 spot? And, these things sort themselves out. That's what they say. They say these things are going to sort themselves out. I don't know who they are, but whoever they are have assured us that these things are going to sort themselves out. So, it's neither here nor there, but it's all for fun, right? It's all for funsies. So there we are. All right, let's look back now and let's see here. Let's go back to this one right there. All right, let's go to the media poll and the NAIA F-ball media poll where Evangel in at number 25. Hey, William has the last name there. That's nice to see. Georgetown in at number 21. St. Francis of Indiana at 22. Southeastern drops a bit in the media poll. And we continue along. Olivet Nazarene in at number 20. Well deserving of that, I thought. Great season for the Tigers so far. They have to continue to make the run in the Midwest Division. Southwestern, McPherson right there in the middle of that 11 to 20 pack. Dort in at number 11 there. Carroll still at number 12 in both polls. And we move to the top 10. St. Thomas and Marion and Campbellsville all tied for that number 8 spot. Friends in at number 6 and Lindsey Wilson at 7. That's been appropriate all the way through. Tie for the 4th spot. So Kaiser, number 2 in the coaches poll, tied for 4th with Montana Tech in the media poll. Morningside, Benedictine, and of course Grandview at the top of that one. So that's just a look through those. And does it mean a whole lot? Not necessarily. It really doesn't. But it's nice to see those numbers from week to week. So you get to see 2 different vantages there. I think one of the things that warrants being pointed out before we get to the Bet the Barn segment and we wrap up for the night is things that happen on one level of college football sometimes will have an effect on other levels. And I present to you, and I talked about it this summer, and I want to keep it in your mind that one of the governing boards of the NCAA Division II went ahead and passed a resolution, and they're going to send it to the convention in the D2 convention, December, January, something like that, to be voted on. And it is a 5 years of eligibility rule to be passed in Division II. And from the people I've talked to in some degree of authority, they're saying it's going to be one of those 5 means 5. So it's not an issue of, well, if you play just a game or two, you could redshirt and get another year. Now you play one down and that's your season. You get on the basketball court, you throw an inbound pass, and that's your season. So 5 means 5. So it's going to have an effect on redshirting and all those things along the way. But the point about it is that if it's done on the Division II level, make no mistake that D1's looking at it. Make no mistake the NAIA is looking at this. And if it's a 5 years of eligibility opportunity on that level, the other affiliations are going to be looking at it and seeing how it works and will it work for them. Okay. We've talked about the transfer portal and what it means, and there's a trickle down effect from the D1 ranks to D1, D2, and the NAIA and Division III as well, from players who may not get to play up there to play here. And forget about up and down on this. There's a trickle down effect, for lack of a better phrase. These things have an effect with coaches too. And of course, the big news from the weekend was Coach James Franklin at Penn State, and that's a big time job. And if you're watching, Division I football too, which I love college football, I'm going to watch it on all levels. If you're watching this and I talked to Mrs. Midwest Sports Now, said they lost to Northwestern. I said this is bad for him, and sure enough, the next day, and we both looked at it and said, yeah, he lost his job. Okay, Arkansas. Head coach, you fire Sam Pittman. Now, I know Bobby Petrino's there, but still, it's an interim position. For anyone who knows Arkansas, this has to be an interim position. UCLA's job. The other thing, interim coaches are stepping in, but there are gaps on this D1 level. There is a coaching carousel on the way, and it will not be something that just affects Division I. It's going to affect Division II coaches, and it could have an effect on NAIA coaches as well. And I just say that to think about this now because we have some really cool coaches in the NAIA. We have some great coaches in the NAIA, and I like seeing those coaches here as we talk about them here on College Football This Week. When we talk about NAIA football, there's some great coaches here. And in that coaching carousel, just keep your eyes out and your ears out, because the last 2 years, somebody from a higher level has snatched up a national championship coach. You go back 2 years, Kaiser, Coach Doug Sosha, he's at the Division II level coaching at Lenoir-Rhyne. Good coach. They brought him in. Great opportunity, one for him to take advantage of. And props to him for doing it. Last year, you get Coach Joe Woodley. Now, he didn't have to move his family. He stays right there in Des Moines and takes the D1 job at Drake. Props to him. Absolutely. But don't think for a moment that some of these other programs aren't looking at the solid work that some of the coaches that we cheer for on the NAIA level, that they're not looking at their work and saying, hey, these are some guys who could get an opportunity. Well, I mean, you look also at Mike Nesbitt, OUAZ coach. Solid coach there for the Spirit, led them to a lot of wins. He's not a head coach on the Division I level, but he is an assistant coach for Houston Christian at the Division I level. So anyway, just something to think about. All right. Dave, I think I said Morningside was in the Bet the Barn this week. I was thinking about last week. I hope that you'll bet the barn anyway, or stick with us on this one. Morningside has a lot on its plate, so I don't know that they need all the Bet the Barn action right now. But stick around with me if you will. All right, let's look at Bet the Barn now. What would we bet the barn? And let's look at these NAIA lines for Bet the Barn. And last week's winners, yeah, Dave Sellen and Robert Whalen. Shout out to Robert, by the way. Robert's pastoring tonight, so he's not watching the live show. So if you see this, Robert, know that we thought of you in that. All right, let's look first at another battle of unbeatens. We're going to talk about some unbeatens tonight. Lindsey Wilson at Campbellsville. These are some teams who can score some points. They're also going to give up a few points as well. I think that's key in this one. So we'll just go right to it. We're putting this one, Bet the Barn. Here's the segment. And go with LWU on this one. LWU points. Are you going over or under 63.5 points? That's where we're putting the line on this one. 63.5 points in this game. And last week, everything seemed to be skewed. So we're hoping the lines this week draw a little more action, maybe on both sides. What kind of action are we going to get here? These are two teams who can put points on the board. I'm not sure their defenses are going to be there. So lots of folks who are watching us live. So if you're in, go ahead and get in the chat, even if you just tuned in. LWU, points over or under? LWU, points over or under? And we'll put this on so we can go on record here. So Matt, already on record, Matt's going to say LWU, points under. Henchman 21, it's about time you showed up. And your Diggers from Butte are on a bye week this week. So you've got to play Bet the Barn away from Montana Tech. All right. I'll just give a shout out to Henchman 21 really quickly. And there we go. Dave, it says over. LWU points over. Anyone else want to get one in here? Be on record. We're not playing for money. There's no actual betting going on for money. It's all about bragging rights. So if you're watching us live, or even if you're watching on demand, you can comment. Let us know. All right, we're coming to the end of this one. I'll give you mine. I'm going to go under, but just barely. Under, but just barely. So I'm going to go LWU points under, but just barely. All right, there we go. You know what? I can put this in here. There we go. We'll put it up on the graphic there. We'll get into the chat as well. All right, let's go to the next one here. This one, Henchman, you still have time to play in this one. Next one, Mayville State. All right, Matt, this one's for you. Mayville State. The ground game is big, and it's important. And I thought at the start of the year that Northern's ground game was going to be key. Brought in Division I running back. I thought the ground game was going to be key. Northern still struggled, and it looks like that their sophomore quarterback may be able to pass the ball too. But for Mayville State, you have to think in this one that Mayville State needs to double what its opponent is doing to get the win. So here is the prop bet. Will Mayville State have more than double the rushing yards of MSU Northern? its opponent, which happens to be this year MSU Northern. It's prop bet here. MSU, more than double or less than double? MSU, more than double or less than double? And we'll go to the comments because you guys need to be on record for this one. MSU, more than double or less than double? I think, and by the way, if they wind up, if Northern gets enough rushing yards to where it's 50% less than one, I think that's not good for the Comets. So, all right, here we go. Matt says less than double. No faith in the rushing game there? Okay. Dave can take a shot at this. Henchman can take a shot at this. Anyone else watching? Henchman says over. Your keyboard is missing an O. All right, here we go. I have faith in Isaiah and Moses. Okay, so I'm going to take MSU, and I'll go with more than double. Dave, any action here on this one? All right, Dave is in, and Dave says more than double. And Henchman, if you're following along, you can put more or MRE on this one or less, LESS. Matt says, has lots of faith in the comments, but realism prevails. So this is one of those prop bets that you're not just depending upon one team's number, you're depending upon both teams' numbers. So I guess you're actually depending on your offense and your defense on this one. All right. Everyone's in the books on this one. Everyone, what you're going to bet the barn for, or if Charles was here, he'd bet a turkey leg too. Shout out to Charles too, next time he gets to watch. All right. Let's go to the next one. And here we go. These are both McPherson at Friends. Both McPherson at Friends here. Let's talk about the Bulldogs and the Falcons. They can both score. They are both combining for 2 points a game, something like that, just shy of 100 points a game. But the defenses are shutting teams down as well. And I don't think we can put the line too high on this one, because I think the defenses play in. But how low do you put that line and say, this is where we are? Okay? So here's the Bet the Barn segment. It's a totals bet for McPherson at Friends on points. So go ahead and, since Friends is closer, put Friends points over or under 51.5. We put the line a little bit lower, probably because we think that the defenses may have a say here. And Friends' point production was a little bit less last week. So there we are. All right, Henchman 21's behind. That's okay. You'll catch up. Over under 51. So here, if you're putting in your comment section of the chat or the comments, Friends, over under 51. So it's actually McPherson and Friends, but Friends, we'll just put that there. Friends over under 51. And Matt's in first. Matt says Friends over. All right. You think it's going to be over 51.5 points. All right. Give you all time to check in just a little bit more while we're here on the live. And we're starting to wrap things up on this Wednesday night. Definitely feels a little bit weird to be here on a Wednesday night, but I'm glad you guys are here. Henchman just ver. So there we go. It's taking Friends ver, because there's no O on his keyboard. And he caught up. Yay. All right. Dave, want to take a shot at this one really quickly? And if Dave is caught up to us, and I'll type mine in. Let's see. Friends, points. I've gone back and forth on this one, especially putting the line at 51.5. I'm going to say over and just barely. So here we are. Dave is in on this one. Dave says over. And since it is on record that I said over before I saw Dave's pick. So not being swayed by Dave tonight. I guess that could be swayed. We come up with a new verb. Is that when you're swayed by Dave, you've been swayed? I don't know. Friends, points, over. We're taking it there. All right, we're on record. Now, this one is the key. And I told you, I think this is key to the game. So let's go with our fourth one tonight. Friends of McPherson, not only the defense is big here for both these programs, but listen to these numbers. McPherson has 16 turnovers to its credit, has 16 takeaways, 9 interceptions, and 7 fumbles recovered. Friends has 14 takeaways, 9 interceptions, and 5 fumbles recovered. Now, it's unlikely that McPherson's going to get too many opportunities to get another interception here. They might. Occasionally, Baker's going to throw the ball. Occasionally, the Friends offense throws a wrinkle in there and you get somebody in there, halfback pass, whatever the case may be. But turnovers are key. Turnovers cost Friends, I think, in a couple of games they've lost in the last couple of years. So, turnovers here. Here's your over-under. Here's your totals bet. And I guess it's kind of a prop bet as well. But here's your totals bet on this one. Final one of the night. Over under 4.5 turnovers combined. Both teams. Over under 4.5 turnovers combined. I think it's big. And this was a struggle as to where to put this line because you couldn't put the line too low. I don't see this game going with neither team getting a takeaway. They're just both too good at it. And if McPherson is able to take the ball away at some key points in this game, I think that very, very heavily sways it in the favor of the Bulldogs. So Matt's going to go on record here really quickly. Matt says turnovers under 4.5. So it was a real struggle to put this line out. And Hinchman 21, same thing, under 4.5. Well, maybe it wasn't a struggle for any of you all to bet on it. Everyone's going under on that one. All right. Anyone else in the chat want to give it a shot? You're welcome to join in now, or if you're watching this on demand, in the comments section. And I'm going to go, let's see, Friends, turnovers. All right. I'm going to have to be different on this. I think it's more. I think there are more than 5.5 turnovers in this one. And it's a weird thing to say, but these two teams are just too good at this. I'm telling you, if I'd put the line at 2.5, I'm wondering if I'd had the same action on that one. But I think 4.5, I'm going to go over. I'm going to go more. So there we are. All right. And by the way, you can see how many times I've won the Bet the Barn segment since we've been doing this a few weeks back. And that is going to start wrapping things up tonight. Wow, 45 games on the docket. Well, 44 on Saturday. Watch the great Grandview and Peru State game. Check in on that on Thursday night. There's a chance I may be back Thursday night, but I did not want to take the chance and miss being with you this week. So you all are awesome. God made you all so well, and it's a privilege. I'm so thankful that you're in the Midwest Sportsnet community and we get to talk every week. Couple of times a week. So this has been fantastic. Next time for sure that we had a chance to talk will be on Sunday night. There may be some other videos along the way. And again, there's also going to be another opportunity to get a cool football interview within the next 10 days or so. So I'll let you know about that. That may show up in the members only chat. But anyway, lots more to do. All right. I'm so thankful to get to visit with you guys tonight. Hinchman 21 back in the building. What was that? Yeah, Dave was saying back in the building tonight. It is about time. Hinchman in the house. We're glad you're there for that. All right, Dave, Matt, Hinchman, and that may be, I think that's just about it for the night. Yeah, that's just about it for those of you all in the chat. If you're watching us live tonight, thank you for watching it all the way to the end. You guys are awesome, and I really do think very highly of you. Look forward to getting to meeting you all, some of you all face-to-face one of these days. And for those of you who are watching the on-demand version of this, you made it all the way to the end. You're a trooper, and I really appreciate you all doing that. So play the Bet the Barn segment in the comments. We'll keep up with all of that. Lots more football coming up. Enjoy a good week. Dave, I know this one should be a fun one. I hope that it's just a fantastic game up there in Orange City and that you guys have a safe trip up there and back. And Matt, I don't know if you're getting to watch that one wherever you are, but should be a lot of fun on that one. And you've got some numbers to watch for the Bet the Barn segment. Hinchman 21, glad you're back in the building. We're still talking Frontier Conference football here, and we're going to keep on doing that. All right, that is it. That is it for the night, and we are done. God bless you all. Thanks again for watching. Have a great, great night, and I will see you all very soon.